right, welcome back. Today on U.S. History, it's chapter 2.5. Okay, so we're about halfway through chapter 2. We're going to finish it up right now. Not sure if I finished it on the last video or not, but in case I didn't mention the printing press, the thing you need to know about the printing press is it's like the internet of the day. Printing press happens, human knowledge explodes, all right? Instead of I read a book, then you read a book, and a year later someone else reads a book, and then we talk about it, and we don't remember what we talked about because there's only one copy of the book. Now we can each have a copy of the book, and we can read it and talk about it together, and knowledge just grows and grows and grows. That's what you need to know about the printing press in case I didn't mention it last time. Because here we go with today's lesson. We're going to talk about the Reformation. Now, how does the printing press and the Reformation work together? Luther's going to nail his 95 Theses to the door, Wittenberg, Church of Wittenberg, I believe. And when he does that, if there's just one copy, you just kind of throw it away. But when you can mass produce it, then you can have a greater effect. It's harder to destroy, it's harder to bury. Anyway, different people are going to head out to North America. Remember the New World, right? Okay. And then we'll talk about the difference between France and Spain. How do they view and treat the Native Americans? And then why do they treat them different? These are the questions that we'll answer today. So make sure you know Reformation. Oh, something else that's underlined, mercantilism. You need to know it for this test. Otherwise, you really don't need to know it that much. It's obsolete. We'll talk about it. It's an economic system. What economic system do you live in today? You should know this. Capitalism. Okay, capitalism. And Spanish Armada. In this video, they're going to call it the most important day in American history. You should know why. You speak English, or at least are in a predominantly English-speaking country. Why is that? When the smart money would have been that we all speak Spanish. This should have been all Spain, maybe. What happened? Let's talk about that. Here we go. Don't forget about the Columbian Exchange. You should know what that is. Know a few items that go back and forth. Very good. Okay. U.S. Congress, most like which historical governing body? Roman Senate. Okay, don't forget that. Okay, what do we learn from Rome? Okay, the idea of republicanism. What do we learn from Athens? The idea of democracy, the right to vote. Okay, just know these. Tuck those away. That's good to know. What region is important in the trade of gold and salt during this time or before this time? West Africa. Very good. All right, here's the preview. What resulted from the defeat of the Spanish Armada? I just told you. What is mercantilism, and what was the Reformation? So let's start with the Reformation. You've got the church, it's Catholic, and there's a break off from that, and that is Eastern Orthodox, but the Catholic Church is the predominant church in Western Europe, okay? Now, that church is going to divide into your Protestant, which is a protest church, protestant movement, and that's going to break away from the Catholic Church. Well, why does that happen? One of the primary reasons is something called indulgences. So to sum it up briefly, basically in the Catholic Church you could say, look, I was wrong, I did this, and the priest would say, cool, you need to give me money and then you'll be forgiven. Basically it was like purchasing forgiveness. And so Martin Luther says, wait, there's a bunch of things that we should do differently, including getting rid of indulgences. And then also, people should read this Bible. And so he nails his thesis that says, hey, we should do some things differently. And this is going to split the church, but it's also going to split countries, okay? England versus, that's not really a good analogy, but the King of England versus the Pope, that's a little better. And so here we go with the Reformation.
In 1517, a German priest named Martin Luther challenges the authority of the Pope and in the process starts a revolution.
This was a man of conviction who was willing to die for what he believed.
Luther risks his life as he questions everything from indulgences to salvation.
Here I stand, I can do no other, God help me.
He nails his 95 Theses to the door in Wittenberg and sparks what we now call the Reformation.
Luther essentially said that every individual person must become a pope, must be the definitive interpreter of the Bible.
The Catholic Church denounces the reformers as heretics. and seeks to snuff out those who threaten the community. The Reformers struggle to hold their theological center, even as radical movements like the Anabaptists gain momentum.
Anabaptists were the one group that Lutherans and Catholics could all agree on as being evil.
In England, King Henry VIII rejects papal authority.
So you end up with a very complicated patchwork of religious change.
Hostility, suspicion, and lack of unity mar the Reformation.
You disagree, you go home at night and you start 3 new churches or denominations when you argue.
Truth unites, but truth also divides.
Did the Reformation go too far?
If we had just found a way to take in Luther's great, legitimate insights, there could be a Lutheran order within Catholicism.
Can the unity Jesus called for ever be achieved?
Your Rabbi Jesus would have never thought of this kind of way of handling disagreement.
This is the Reformation, and it changed everything.
Okay, welcome back. Now let's talk about mercantilism. Okay, here we go. Write these down. These things are simple questions to ask on a test, and you might as well know, and I'll be straight real with you. You need to know mercantilism for U.S. history or right around this time period of history, but into modern times, you don't need to know it as much, okay? What was the goal of mercantilism? The goal equals get gold, okay? The goal is gold. You want to have gold. How do you get the gold? You get the gold by having a positive trade balance. Export more than I import. That's what you want to do. You want a positive trade balance. I want to export, sell stuff more than I buy stuff, okay? Here's the problem. If you want to sell more than you buy, and I want to sell more than I buy, what's the math there? It's impossible, okay? Someone's got to buy more than they sell in order for the math to work out. Here come colonies, okay? And the colonies are places that you can exploit and that you can give you stuff that you turn into raw materials and then sell back to them with the price nice and jacked up high, and then you can have this positive trade balance. So, spoiler alert, America's about to have some colonies, okay? And there's no America yet, but we're about to have some colonies. And if the economic goal is to exploit these colonies, how do you think the colonists are going to feel eventually? Exploited, right? So they could make their own hat for, let's say, $5. But instead, they have to take the beaver, and they have to take the pelt, or whatever raw material it is, wood or whatever, send it to England, they make the hat, and then kick it back, and it costs $10, or whatever. My point is, they're not going to be allowed to make certain things, and they're going to have this trade imbalance, and they're basically exploited, okay? So from this graph, here's what you need to know. Who's the mother country? Who are the colonies? In our case, mother country England, colonies, the colonies that are about to become the colonies of the United States, right? Cool. You see there, gold, silver, these are raw materials. So this is something else to know. Raw materials go from where to where? From the colonies to the mother country. And the manufactured goods from the mother country to the colonies. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. We learned a lot right there with the trade balance and what stuff. Watch it.
Mercantilism is an economic system in which the government has control over foreign trade. It was used by European powers such as Britain, France, Spain, and so on, primarily from the 16th century through the late 18th century. The main idea of mercantilism is that a country wants to increase its wealth by accumulating as much gold and silver as it can. To do this, a country must have a favorable balance of trade, meaning they are exporting more than they import. Remember, exports are goods that are sent to other countries to be sold, while imports are goods brought into a country to be sold. So if a country can export more than it can import, it is essentially making a profit. These European powers realized that colonies could play a major role in gaining more wealth and thus more power. Colonies could serve two important roles for the mother country, that is, the powerful country that is establishing the colonies in the first place. The first role is to produce raw materials from the resources of the area. This could be timber, beaver pelts, or most important, gold. The second role of the colony is to act as a market and to import manufactured goods from its mother country. The more markets a country has, the more it can sell and the more money it can make. Eventually, mercantilism would be replaced with forms of capitalism as writers such as Adam Smith promoted a free trade approach.
All right, here's another good one. Man, let's load it down with vocab today. What's the Northwest Passage? All these explorers, or lots of them anyway, were looking for a way to get to Asia still. Asia was the big money. If you can get to China, you can make the big money. And so they're looking for a way to go through America. Some sort of magic river combination. If I go through this lake and down this river and up here and this and that, can I get out to the Pacific and then go to Asia? What is that magic river called that doesn't exist? It's called the Northwest Passage. Look. Okay, fine. So it does exist up there above Canada, but that's not what they were looking for. They're looking for something called the Northwest Passage going through America. Anyway, Northwest Passage. Take a look at this guy. He looks extra happy, right? Why would Mr. Henry Hudson here be so sad? Because he's got gold fever, man. He wants that passage. He can smell it. He can taste it. He's almost there, but he can't quite find it because it doesn't exist. His crew puts him on this little boat and then pushes him into the ice, and then they sail back. And so that's what you're looking at here, Henry Hudson. Check this video out.
Henry Hudson was the greatest explorer whose dreams never came true.
Henry Hudson was an English navigator and explorer who repeatedly tried to find a route from Europe to Asia without success.
He is considered the person who is in effect responsible for the founding of New York City, and he is also considered one of the founding figures of Canada because of his discovery of Hudson Bay.
Little is known of Hudson's early life, but many believe he was born around 1565 in England. Hudson became a skilled sailor and navigator.
In 1607, he convinced a group of investors to sponsor an expedition that would take him from England to East Asia.
The goal was to find an ice-free passage to China, sailing essentially north around the European continent.
In the next 2 years, Hudson tried twice to find a route to the Far East via the Arctic Ocean, but he was unsuccessful. Between expeditions, Hudson is believed to have married and had 3 sons.
In 1609, with the backing of Dutch investors, Henry Hudson decided he would try to look for the Northwest Passage. His crew sailed south and west across the Atlantic Ocean.
Hudson turns south and sails into New York Bay and up the Hudson River that bears his name today, looking for some kind of inlet or bay that would turn out to be a passage through the continent.
In 1610, this time sailing under the British flag, Hudson again tried to find the Northwest Passage to the Pacific. This time following a more northern route. He sailed into what is now the Hudson Strait, and then into the bay.
When he sails into Hudson Bay, which of course is large enough so there's actually tidal pull in the bay, it was very easy to mistake it for a passage to the Pacific. And Hudson was not willing to believe otherwise.
He and his crew spend the rest of the summer looking for a passage farther west because they realize they are not in East Asia.
In November 1610, Hudson's ship became icebound in the Hudson Bay during a terrible winter. Finally, in June, the ship was able to leave, but Hudson refused to go home, and so the crew mutinied.
They placed Henry Hudson, his son, and about 7 other members of the crew in a shallop, a small boat, and set them adrift, and then proceeded to take the ship back to England. Henry Hudson and the other marooned sailors were never heard from again.
Many people think that Henry Hudson was a failure because he never achieved his life's goal, which was to find a quick water route to Asia. What we should remember is that he was an able navigator, that his ships always made it back to their investors, and that there is now more water named for Henry Hudson than any other human being who's ever lived.
So the most water is named after him, but when I think of Hudson, I always think of this.
Federal investigators have just released cockpit audio tapes detailing what happened in the last moments before U.S. Airways Flight 1549 ditched in the Hudson River. On the tapes, you can hear the pilot radioing that they've hit birds, a flock of birds, and the rush is on to find a safe place to land. Let's get right to NBC's Tom Costello. He's been listening to these audio tapes. really astonishing to hear the calm. Take us through what happened.
Very compelling. We're going to play it for you, but before we do, let's set it all up because it helps to hear if you know what to listen for. To begin with, U.S. Airways Flight 1549 is known as Cactus 1549. That's their call sign, Cactus 1549. At one point, the controller gets confused, calls it 1529. Still the same plane, 1549. The controller says, do you want to go back to well, first of all, the pilot reports we hit birds. The controller says, do you want to go back to LaGuardia? Pilot says we can't do it. Controller says, do you want to go to Teterboro in New Jersey? The pilot says, yes, get me to Teterboro. You're going to hear the controller pick up the phone, call Teterboro. Teterboro Airport says, yes, we can take an emergency right now. And then you're going to hear things apparently aren't going as well as they'd hoped. Here's the tape.
Cactus 1549, turn left lane 270.
This is Cactus 1539. Hit birds. We've lost thrust on both engines, returning back towards LaGuardia.
Okay, you need to return to LaGuardia. Turn left heading up 220.
220.
Tower, stop your departures. Got emergency returning. It's 1529. He bird strike. He lost all engine. He lost the thrust in the engines. He's returning immediately.
Cactus 1529. Which engines?
He lost thrust in both engines. He said.
Got it.
Cactus 1529. We can get it for you. Do you want to try to land 1013?
We're unable. We may end up in the Hudson.
Showing 2760. Turn left 070.
070. Showing 2760.
Hi, Cactus 1549. It's going to be left traffic to runway 31.
Unable.
Okay, what do you need to land? Cactus 1549. Runway 4 is available if you want to make left traffic to runway 4.
Idiot. I'm not sure we can make any runway. What's over to our right? Anything in New Jersey? Maybe Teterboro?
Okay, yeah, off your right side is Teterboro Airport. Do you want to try to go to Teterboro?
Yes.
Teterboro, Empire. Actually, LaGuardia departure guy, emergency inbound.
Hey, guy.
Cactus 1529 over the George Washington Bridge. Wants to go to the airport right now.
Wants to go to our airport. Check. Does he need assistance?
Yes. It was a bird strike. Can I get him in for runway 1?
Runway 1, that's good.
Cactus 1529, turn right 280. You can land runway 1 at Teterboro.
We can't do it.
Okay, which runway would you like at Teterboro?
We're going to be in the Hudson.
The guy's super calm under pressure, right? Okay, Spanish Armada. Big deal, little deal, no deal, huge deal. Let's talk about it. In fact, let's talk first and then I'll show you this video. 30 ships or 130 ships, 30,000 sailors, none of that matters. This is what matters. Spain, the conquistadors. Spain is exploring. Spain is sending out people. They're the tip of the spear. They're claiming land in North and South America. For all the smart money would have been on Spain to occupy North America for a very long time. Utah belonged to Spain, kind of. I mean, the Native Americans would have disagreed with that statement. But it's on the map as being part of the Spanish Empire. What happens? The Armada goes to England. Had the Armada succeeded, England is defeated and England becomes part of Spain. We all speak Spanish. You probably like different music. You might like different food. Personally, I love Spanish food and Mexican food, so I don't know how different that would be. But does that make sense? This one event sends a domino effect into the future. Spanish Armada goes down. England is now set to go up, and France, England and France, and they get a chance to go to the New World, and they get a chance, and suddenly they're on board.
What is the most important date in American history? July 4th, 1776, the date of American independence? Or April 12, 1861, the first day of the Civil War that ended slavery in America? Or maybe December 7th, 1941, the day the Japanese Empire bombed Pearl Harbor, bringing America into World War II? Or how about this one, July 28th, 1588? Yes, 1588, that's 30 years before Plymouth Rock and almost 20 years before Jamestown, John Smith, and Pocahontas. So why is it such an important date in American history? First, a little background. In 1588, the most powerful man in the world was the King of Spain, Philip II. Flush with gold and silver from the New World, he had no rival save one, Queen Elizabeth of England. England was a Protestant nation, and Spain was Catholic, as was most of Europe. In addition to considering her a heretic, Philip hated her for two additional reasons. First, she was financing a rebellion by the Dutch Protestants against Spain in the Spanish Netherlands, which Philip controlled. And second, because she had executed her rebellious cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots. Mary, like Philip, was a Catholic monarch. Philip felt that Mary, not Elizabeth, was the rightful heir to the English throne. Philip felt that with the execution of Mary, Queen of Scots, Elizabeth had gone too far. The time had come, he decided, to discipline her and her heretic nation. He came up with an audacious plan. He would invade England. To do this, he needed a large army and lots of ships. He needed an armada, 130 ships that would carry 30,000 men. Philip was very rich, but not that rich. To build such a fleet, he would have to borrow heavily. But this wasn't much of an obstacle. Once he had conquered England, he could use the English treasury to pay off any debts. The Pope, wishing to see England return to the Catholic fold, promised additional financing. So the ships were built, the soldiers recruited. Most importantly, Philip had chosen a competent man to lead them, the Marquis de Santa Cruz. Santa Cruz asked for more time to prepare his ships and men. But Philip was impatient, far too impatient as it turned out. In a massive stroke of misfortune, the first of many, Santa Cruz died just before the Armada was set to sail. Rather than take the time to seek a new suitable replacement, Philip pushed ahead and appointed Duke Medina Sidonia to take command. There was only one problem. Sidonia was an army general. He had no naval experience. In fact, he'd never been out to sea. You can't hide 130 ships and 30,000 men. The English knew the Spanish were coming, and they were ready for them. What they lacked in firepower, they made up in maneuverability, familiarity with the treacherous English Channel, and the most capable and creative sea commanders of the age, Lord High Admiral Howard, Sir John Hawkins, and Sir Francis Drake. They knew they couldn't win a shootout with the Spanish. So instead, they launched a preemptive attack on the Spanish fleet while it was still docked in the French port of Calais. Setting a number of their own ships on fire, they sailed them into the port. The Spanish cut their anchors to flee the flaming English ships. But in their panic, they only made matters worse. The Spanish ships rammed into each other, tangling riggings, slicing sails, and crushing hulls. The vessels that weren't damaged were sitting ducks for the English cannon. Seeing that England had blocked their escape back to Spain, the badly wounded Armada sailed north into the Atlantic, hoping to regroup. But then the weather turned, and Mother Nature finished what the English had started. When it was all over, only 76 of the 130 Spanish ships returned home, and half of the 30,000 men were now at the bottom of the ocean floor. Spain never challenged England again. Spain never challenged anyone again. It was finished as a great power. So why was the defeat of the Spanish Armada so important to American history? If the Armada had won, England would have become part of the Spanish Empire. There would have been no further English exploration of the North American coastline. In all likelihood, Spain, not England, would have colonized the eastern seaboard and expanded westward. Spain would have ruled America as it did South America. There would have been no 13 colonies, no 13 original United States. The America that we know would not exist.
All right, so here we go. They want you to know about France in North America and the big difference between the French and the Spanish. So let's just get into this. Let's look at these pictures real quick. You can see the different explorations. Okay, here are the different settlements. Okay, so what do the Spanish explorers want? Gold. How are they going to treat the natives? Poorly. They're going to force them to look for gold. Oftentimes, this gold does not exist. Okay? Now, the French, what do they want? They want fish and fur. And so how do they treat the natives? They're going to treat them better because they're going to trade with them. You can't force someone to go hunt. That's a lot more difficult. You can force someone to dig, but you can't force them to fish and hunt they'll just disappear into the forest, or, there's just too much. So the French relationship with the Native Americans is different, and it's based on the economics a lot of the ways. And so just know that. Awesome job. I hope you learned a lot. You should know mercantilism. You should know some colony mother country, something like that. You should know about the Spanish Armada. Next time on U.S. History, it's Chapter 3. We'll see you there.